The first step foreigners inside China applying for a new job is doing a online work permit application. Now, you don't do this. Your employer does this, and your employer has to do this. They have a business account that's needed to sign up to the work permit application system. So they do this for foreigners, for foreigners they're hiring. And in a moment here, I'm going to show you and explain to you what that process looks like on the employer's screen. So this first page here is your profile picture, your name, last name, date of birth, passport, when it was issued, when it expires, your level of education, your level of Chinese speaking. And here I blacked out most of my personal information here. Below this page, we'll have the name of your employer on the left column as I'm going down. So on the first column here, um, name of your employer, the type of position you're applying for, the length of time, months working in 1 year, and at the bottom here, this number here is the visa number that you're applying from. So whenever you're applying for a work permit in China, you already have to have a valid visa. That could be your previous residence visa from your last employer. It could be a stay visa. It could be maybe a tourist visa. It could be a Z visa, the first visa that you get before coming to China, that you use to enter China. But you definitely seem to need to have some sort of valid visa to apply from work permit. Now in the second column here, we have jobs. For me, it's administrative office staff, mode of employment. Below that, start date of employment, um, date of entry, and then emergency contact. Third column, current job subject. Seems that they have some internal code categorizing the types of job subjects. So for me, it's 740. I think this translates to linguistics. Below that is your salary monthly. Country of dispatch, I guess country of origin, that would be from Canada. Can't really get the translation here working. And then in the last column, top right here, it's asking you, have you worked in China for a continuous period of years? I think mine is less than 5 years. And then interestingly enough, it asks for working years, and there's 2 here. Not sure. I'm seeing what you're seeing. You can photo, screenshot, translate yourself to get all the categories. Now let's move on to the most interesting and I think relevant page here. So obviously here we have on the first row all the different steps to get to this final summary page. And the first row we have basic information, green check mark. Next, request information, education experience, work experience, and and then this is the index of information. So number 1 here we have your application for work permit for foreigners in China. So this is a 2-page form that again your employer will fill out. You just need to sign it. Second is your proof of work experience. Third is your highest degree or professional certificate. 4 is your non-criminal check. 5 is your medical check. 6, your employment contract. And in the brackets here, it explains it has to have your working time, working location, working content, salary, position, your signature, and the company seal or signature. Number 7, applicant's passport, like the front page of it. 8 is your valid visa that you're applying from. So I just want to go quickly back to number one, a work permit application form for a foreigner. Here is an example of my old one. And I'm not going to explain, but basically here's the first page, here's the second page, and the final page where you sign. Okay. Now, going back to the online application. Once everything is uploaded by your employer, and after 5 or so business days, it's going to get approved. Your employer is going to print out a online application form basically saying that the work permit online is approved. And the next step now is your employer goes with you with your original documents that you uploaded to the online system to the Foreign Export Bureau, FEB. And this FEB officer will look through your originals, confirm everything, and then tell you to come back in, let's say, maybe 10 or 15 business days. It varies, honestly, but typically 10 business days, and your physical work permit card will be finished. And this should allow you to begin working immediately, even though your residence visa still hasn't been processed yet. Now, I say this because Article 41 of the Entry-Exit Law of China says that no entity or individual shall employ foreign nationals who have not obtained a work permit or a residence permit of the work type. The key word there is or. So you don't need a residence permit and a work permit, meaning you don't need a residence visa and a work permit. You need a work permit or a residence visa work type. So once your work permit is finished, you will get a physical card. It'll look something like this. There'll be a QR code. But before we get to the QR code, the number at the bottom, this number doesn't change between all your different work permit cards. So this number will always stay the same. Now, recruiters in China, they and HR have access to a different system where they can put in this number. And this number will give them more detailed information from your work permit application. Your QR code doesn't have that same information. It's more basic. What the QR code information shows is this. So again, it'll have your basic information, your name, gender, date of birth, nationality, your address of work, the name of the company you work, and the effective date of when you begin and finish work. So basically the expiry date of your work permit will show. And this is all from your QR code that you scan. But again, the number on the bottom of your work permit card, that one will tell you additional information such as even your salary amount, that detailed information that you gave previously. And I should note here, because I've experienced this multiple times now, but your employer is not allowed to hold any of your identification or otherwise your documents. So this article number 9 of the labor law clearly says that employees' resident ID card or other documentation cannot be collected from him under some guise, some excuse. So this is your property. It's your personal information. It's your work permit. It's not your employer's. So Article 9 here. Interesting to note, though, if your school does violate this, the police will not get involved, at least in my experience, because it is under labor law, not, let's say, civil or criminal law or entry-exit law. So the police will typically tell you to go to labor arbitration or people's court to try to get this rectified, which is a very long and tedious process. Thought I would add that in there. So your work permit finishes, you get your physical work permit card. You then go to the PSB, the Public Security Bureau, and this is basically a police station for immigration matters. They are the entry-exit law police officers. And when you go there, they'll give you a form such as this to fill out. I'm not going to explain the form, but on the second page, you can see purpose. So in this example here, I was trying to apply for a humanitarian or stay visa, as they call them. It's a temporary, usually 30-day visa. But you can see under in number 7 for residents, you can see employee, student, journalist, family reunion, personal affair, such as that. Interesting enough, I don't see any option here to input your work permit information. So I would assume that when applying for a residence work visa, that they have in their system a cross-reference automatically if you have a work permit valid or not. Now I want to talk a little bit about what your employer should provide you in order for you to be able to move on to your next employment. So typically, there's 3 documents your employer should provide you when your contract expires or you quit or you're fired. The first one is your work permit cancellation letter. So this is when they have to go into the government system and press a couple buttons and cancel your work permit. However, you do need to sign a work cancellation form for them to be able to do this. Here's a picture of this form. Now, the second most important document they should provide you is what they call often a release letter or a separation letter. And in this letter, I'll give you an example of one of mine, but this is something they could write in 5 minutes, and they just have to seal it with their company stamp. And yeah, these 2 documents are very, very important. Without them, you will not be able to apply for any new job, in my experience. And I'm going to get into my experience much later down in the video, precisely showing you how this is occurring to me right now. Anyway, the third document sometimes asked for is a reference letter, and I'll also post here in front of you a picture of what that looks like. Again, could be created in 5 minutes and stamped with the employer's seal. So with these 3 documents, you are able to apply for a new work permit. Your new employer is able to use these documents to apply for your new work permit. Now, there's a caveat here, and this is where the standardization of mainland China seems to fall through. your work cancellation letter, there appears to be a time limit on that. For Shanghai, this is 30 days. So after 30 days, if you are applying for a job in Shanghai, after 30 days, if you don't have a new employer processing your new work permit within that 30 days, and the 30 days comes and goes, then you need to get on a stay visa. So you need to cancel your residence visa, which still may be valid, doesn't matter. You have to cancel it and get on a stay visa and then apply from the stay visa. Plus, you need to get another non-criminal check. It doesn't matter if you left the country since you entered China or not. So in my experience, I went to Jiangsu province, worked there for a bit, quit, got my documents, and went to Guangdong. And it was about 60 days since my work permit was canceled, and there was no problem. I reused my non-criminal check that I used to enter China, and that was no issue. And no one told me to get on a stay visa either. It was no problem. And then again, when I finished my contract in Guangdong, I went to another city in Guangdong province, and again, my work permit was a little bit over 30 days old, and again, I didn't need a new non-criminal check or a stay visa. But coming from Guangdong to Shanghai, yes, I got into a lot of a headache with the local policy here because my work permit was expired by more than 30 days, more than 90 days, I think. And then they asked me to get a new non-criminal check, which is an ordeal you're going to hear about later on. So that's typically my experience. Other foreigners will tell you the same thing, that they have their own version of this. For example, in Shanghai, I didn't need to get a stay visa. I did transfer from my valid Guangdong residence visa to a Shanghai residence visa. There was no stay visa in between, which to many Shanghai foreigners was unusual. So there is no standardization. Now, if you call the national hotline for immigration services, they do speak English. I will post the phone number in front of you. They will also typically give you this 30-day time limit on your work permit cancellation letter. Now, if you look at the entry-exit law, the closest one that we have to, forcing someone who quit their job or lost their job to change their residence visa is this article. Article 33 of the entry-exit law is the law that the immigration hotline in China will eventually come to. And they'll also be surprised that it says 10 days and not 30 days. Now, in my experience, talking to other foreigners and living in Guangdong province, Guangdong does not require you to cancel your residence visa. When I came to Shanghai and I went to the PSB, they also asked how come I didn't cancel my residence visa after 30 days of my work permit being canceled. Well, I told them I was, and this is true, suing my old school. And I also told them that, there was Corona and, I went to the PSB and they didn't tell me I needed to cancel it. And they accepted that. But there is a punishment for not canceling your residence visa, which is under another article, which I'll put in front of you here. Okay, so be warned of that. And if you do get permission from the PSB that you don't have to cancel your residence visa, then make sure you get that on some sort of evidence, audio or video recording or something like that, just to protect yourself. Now, I just want to point out the obvious from what I discussed previously. The time frame for work permit and residence visa, even the first step can take sometimes 10 days. So this 10-day enforcement of canceling your valid residence visa after your work permit was canceled is not really fair, because as I mentioned, in Shanghai, as soon as you hit a stay visa, you need to get a new non-criminal check no matter what. And that process of getting a new non-criminal check while you're in China is expensive and can take months. From what I've talked to other foreigners that have been hit by this Article 33 over 10 days, it's always been in the context of the employer trying to punish the employee for maybe leaving his contract early, or even not renewing his contract. You know, they'll phone the immigration police at the PSB and then report on the employee, and then the PSB will hound them to make sure that after 10 days or 30 days that they go to the PSB to cancel their residence visa. So it's typically a law that's not enforced, and when it is, it's definitely prejudiced against the workers and initiated by the employer, because the PSB, if you ever go to one of them, they are a huge mess, constantly busy, overworked. It's kind of a circus in there, and I don't think they are tracking the expiry dates of work permits in connection to residence visas. Anyway, I digress.